I am Benjamin Kerstein.
I'm Amanda Ring.
I'm a film critic / lover of cinema. Amanda Ring is also a lover of cinema
and a filmmaker and artist of sorts. And welcome to our annual podcast.
Yes. And we're going to discuss, which will we discuss first? Once Upon a Time.
Our annual chat.
Chat.
It's not really a podcast.
Every time Amanda comes to Israel, we do a little chat. So welcome. Which one are we going to go with?
Well, this is a conversation that's based off of our lengthy discussions about film, and usually comparing something that's already been out probably for a while and something that's new, and we like to kind of
mix it up.
Like cross-cut ideas between different things and find all kinds of connections.
So this is montage, folks.
This is like a collage discussion.
So which will we start with? Once Upon a Time?
Well, we're gonna talk about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Big Little Lies.
Right.
And then later this week, we're going to discuss two other films. So
Tree of Life and
something
else. We're not sure yet.
Probably Midsummer.
Okay.
So So I saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood twice.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Already? Okay.
Yeah, I saw it twice, and you saw it once just recently.
I saw it once. Yeah, the other last week.
I didn't see it on film though. I didn't get. Maybe when I go to LA, I'll see it on film.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we really liked.
I thought it was wonderful.
Yeah, we had a great time watching it.
But I'm prejudiced because I'm a huge Tarantino fan, and actually, the only movie of his I've really disliked was The Hateful Eight. And
I guess I didn't really love Django as much.
Really? Oh,
yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, as a person who's fairly averse to violence in the cinema.
That's me. Yeah.
Yeah. Even though I'm becoming more and more averse as I get older, but which I think is normal. But you still kind of love Tarantino, right? You still think he's...
No, I mean I love the stylized stuff that he does, and I really like all the kind of collaging and different like mixing and matching of pop culture references. I think it's really even. I think he was way ahead of his time. It's super relevant stuff now because of what's going on in social media and the way that we're using clips and different sorts of media.
The collage style.
Yeah, like everything is kind of like randomly sewn and put together. I mean, we're watching it in all these random ways. Like you'll watch like a piece of an old black and white film, and then like 2 seconds later, it's some like hip hop dance thing, and I feel like there is something like Tarantino like has like that. Like that sensation going for him in all his work, but way before this trend started. So it's funny that he wants to like retire soon, because I think his time is really now in a weird way.
He's kind of the first filmmaker to go meta all the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Very self-consciously.
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, obviously there were other films, like even Star Wars is very meta. I mean, it brings in all kinds of different strains of film and stuff, like the Western and the science fiction movie.
Right, but it's still like tonally all the same way. But here...
It doesn't give the game away, whereas Tarantino is like, I'm just throwing everything in.
Yeah, and like in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he has like the different aspect ratio in the Westerns, and then he flips.
He did?
Yeah, he has like that like a boxier black and white.
The Academy ratio and.
Yeah, like when he has like the black and white interview in the beginning with Rick Dalton, and then he starts cutting into like other parts of the film. He just changes the looks, the different ways of shooting, really. And he doesn't really seem to care whether or not like they're going to flow super nicely with each other. That's very like 2019. I think
the jaggedness of it.
Yeah, like the way that we're watching and perceiving stuff now. But he started doing that years ago. I think even a little bit like kind of.
Oh yeah, I mean, Pulp Fiction is a classic example where it's just this bringing in disparate elements of the crime film and movie literacy and. Pop culture literacy, all together, which I think is really interesting. But we both talked about this before. It seems like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is his most, to use a somewhat vague idea, his most mature picture.
Yeah.
And that in some ways it's the least jagged, I think, of all of his pictures. It sort of has a flow to it. It sort of is less well, for one thing, it's much less violent
Right.
than most of his pictures.
It's less like comic book like in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Less
There's
like
less
these caricatures.
exaggeration.
Yeah.
It's less theatrical, I think.
Yeah.
You know?
Like we're getting in, we're seeing like Rick Dalton have a breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing like Cliff Booth go through like a psychologically difficult
Mm-hmm.
situation where he might get hurt or he might, or vice versa, and then you have the cult and all these things, and there's a feeling of like a deeper kind of like a sinister.
I think particularly in the scenes with Sharon Tate.
Yeah.
And especially the scene where she's watching her own movie.
Yeah.
There's a languid quality
Yeah.
that most of his other pictures don't have. There's almost a dreamlike, oniric, to use the pretentious term. You know,
That's a pull out our dictionary.
that's almost more,
Yeah.
speaking of Tree of Life, it's almost more Malick than it is Godard or
A little like transcendent. Yeah.
Because she barely has any dialogue.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it's all
That's
like
a big controversy.
on her face. Yes, I know, and we should talk about that.
Yeah.
She's this kind of glittering jewel. But
Right.
I felt like that style was really new for him, and he did it really well.
Yeah.
You know, like when a director changes up his style in that way, you sort of expect it to be awkward. But
Right.
I mean, those scenes are beautiful in their own
Right.
sort of floating.
But at the
world
ranch
kind
too,
of way.
there was also that feeling of like, like languid is a good word. Like that suddenly, like it feels actually very like a lot like California, like the feeling out in California, but like like this mellow, but like we're gonna start scratching beneath the surface, deep into the character and the emotion.
It ends in a very Hitchcockian way.
Oh,
you know, it's
yeah.
almost like The Birds, where they're standing
that
there
changes,
staring at him.
but that's a whole change too, like that, going from like languid and like and then suddenly to like
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But the scene when he sees Bruce Dern,
right.
you know, who's obviously completely fucked up,
Yeah, it's a funny
you know,
scene.
and he's being essentially sexed to death by these young evil nymphets. You know, these what do you call them? These
They're not nymphets. They're like
no,
they're
like
dirty
succubuses. You know what I mean? And when he walks out, and they're all in this kind of semicircle staring at him.
Right.
That's very Hitchcockian to me.
Okay,
that,
yeah.
that kind of menacing silence. You know what I mean? Which is, it's funny because the film has great unity of style, and yet it
keeps flipping around.
It keeps flipping around. Yeah,
It's not easy to do. Yeah, I mean that's like after years of dipping his toes into many different styles. And then also analyzing, I'm sure he watches like he's seen everything that's ever been out there.
On the face of the earth, yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's kind of I think that's why the audience went really wild. It's because he's not like getting stuck in genre. He's giving something.
Yeah.
He's putting something on film in a theater that we're not getting, anywhere else, and so it still feels like a little bit special. Not just because it's pretty to look at, but because it has something, tonally or written into the script that's like still fresh.
I think it also should be noted that particularly in the final sequence where it does turn violent,
Right.
it's an absolutely hilarious movie.
Oh yeah,
I mean, it really is very
the
funny.
flamethrower was really
Yeah, that's great. When he walks out like military style. I have a friend who's really a rock-ribbed conservative.
Okay.
And he just loved watching this
The flamethrower.
horrible vengeance being wreaked on these dirty hippies. You know what I mean?
Oh no. Well, I mean, like, we can talk also about like whether or not he needed to spend so much time killing the woman.
I did notice that there is first of all, there's a lot of violence against women at the end.
Right.
It's portrayed, and then there's floating over it for those who know the true story. There's always the menace of extraordinary violence against Sharon Tate.
Right.
Because people who know the truth know that she was absolutely brutally murdered.
Right.
So it's
And she was pregnant.
And she was pregnant.
Right.
And there's a vulnerability to her character throughout the film where you're sort of, again, if you know the story, which I don't know how many young people who are seeing it actually know what happened.
Right.
But where you feel like at any moment you're waiting for this horrible thing to happen, and then he flips around on you and shows this very funny scene where it doesn't.
I almost like forgot that it was about to happen. Like I was getting so lost in the era that he was portraying that I had to remind myself, like, oh wait, like she's gonna die. Like like he did such a good job, like almost like convincing me out of it and then bringing it back around.
There is also a political context, I think, which is that I think that in terms of, although he makes fun of it as well, there is, and I say this as a sort of moderate conservative politically.
Okay.
I should admit that right off the bat.
I don't think it's that relevant.
Yeah, no, it's just that there is a kind of celebration to a degree of certain, I would forgive me for saying it, but masculine virtues that are identified to some degree with the right. You know, the cowboy, the
well, they've
lone
usurped
man,
it.
you know?
They've used recently, like they've taken those ideas and made it their idea, as opposed to, so that they see leftists as kind of effeminate people.
And that maybe play into the fact that the film is problematic. I suppose people are criticizing it from a feminist point of view.
Yeah, well, Sharon Tate doesn't have any lines, but the way that I took it, I didn't take it as badly as other women might have taken it. I thought her silence was actually like highlighted her victimization. That because that she wasn't really, I don't know if that Tarantino wrote it that way, but that's how it felt, was like she wasn't able to speak her truth, like she wasn't able to defend herself, like, so she was kind of she was a silent victim to some degree, and we also don't know much about her life, and so we see a little bit of glimpses of that in the film. But her whole life is defined by the disgusting way in which she died. But that part didn't bother me as much. I was more if we're going to pick apart the feminist stuff, like I was bothered more by the length of time it took for the woman to get murdered. I felt like the guy got murdered super quickly.
Yes, I see what you mean.
And then the woman, it was like a lot of extra time to like get them.
When he's bashing her face into the table and and
then even for the flamethrower. Once we got past the comedic part of it, it was like a lot of fire.
Yeah,
in the pool, and
there is an aspect of the destruction of the female body in it that is, which we see with a lot of male filmmakers, particularly I feel like lately. There is a kind of...
what other film were you thinking?
Well, I was actually... What it made me think of at the time was in the Blade Runner sequel, when Jared Leto slits the woman's stomach, which is obviously also where a child is gestated. It made me think of that specifically, but I feel like there's been other aspects.
I just don't think that female filmmakers go to these sort of violent places that easily. But I didn't feel outraged by this film the way that I... might. I don't think I'm like a hardcore. I don't like to look at films like in such a hardcore feminist way necessarily. I just think it's important to point out where the female voice might be a little bit too small, or or something is too male gaze. The female gaze is not given enough time. Really, you have to have female creators putting more work out there.
Right, obviously.
That's the bottom.
And Tarantino, obviously, we all know is a very macho director in that sense.
Right.
He doesn't seem to be a particularly macho man, in a way.
You mean like in real life?
In real life, yeah. Although who knows, we don't know him.
I think like everyone in the industry ends up just pairing up, or teaming up with whoever works for them, and then it just they're choosing it based on those like the chemistry more than like whether or not it should be equalized.
There is a handful of moments, though, that do have, in a way, the female gaze. And I'm thinking particularly the scene where Brad Pitt is totally objectified as a sex object. And I was telling you that you told me that women gasp.
Yeah, like I hear them
when
behind
he takes his shirt off on the roof. And I was sitting next to two girls, and when he took his shirt off, one of them just whispered, "Fuck." So, and I feel like in that scene, he is totally objectified. There is a kind of strangely feminine.
The second time I watched it, I felt like I felt like I sensed like a little embarrassment on his face, like that he knows that he's like beefcaking it. Right?
Yeah, exactly. But I feel like in that scene, I don't know whether it's good to objectify anybody, but in that scene, he's being objectified as much as Margot Robbie is.
I think his career is always. I think if there's anyone that understands objectification, it's him. It's
of a man.
Yeah, he's the one. He would have more in common with women.
He always has been the sort of quintessential pretty boy.
Yeah, like he's been ripped apart. Top to I think sort of his physicality like since the early days.
Yeah, that's true.
It would be interesting to see him like in a film where he can like empathize from the female side of it. I don't know how.
Has he ever been directed by a female director?
I don't know. I don't know his whole filmography.
Yeah.
Was it Thelma and Louise?
No, that was Ridley Scott.
Oh, it was Ridley Scott.
It was written by a woman.
Oh, okay.
But directed by a man. So I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to see him in like a Sofia Coppola movie.
Yeah.
You know.
Right. Something like a softer.
Yeah.
Situation.
Yeah. Like the way that what's his name in the Virgin Suicides, the good-looking guy. I can't remember his name, the actor, but the way that he's shot. You know, the one that Kirsten Dunst ends up
right
with.
I'm not remembering right now.
Yeah. But anyway.
But yeah, no, I mean, but so that was a very interesting part in the film. But I guess and then Rick Dalton has his own kind of like childish, sure. Moment where he doesn't get to act like a man. We see him really not acting like an adult.
Yeah, basically. I actually found that really interesting because unlike I guess most movie stars,
right.
Leonardo DiCaprio seems prepared and perfectly willing to be portrayed as a total buffoon.
Right.
I mean, Rick Dalton through most of that movie is essentially a buffoon.
Right.
Like he's not very bright. He's not very mature.
Right.
You know, he's essentially on a career collapse at that point.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I felt like
Well, it's not really. His career wasn't really collapsing. He just was like not going to be as big of a star as he had wanted to be, and he kind of can't really settle into something that's not as glittery.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean there's a lot of vulnerability, I think, from the men. There's a lot of gray areas, I think, in this film in that way. But yeah, I mean, I guess we
should talk about the Bruce Lee scene.
Okay.
Which has been very controversial.
Oh, right.
You said that you didn't think that scene worked.
The first time, no. The first time I thought it was hilarious. The first time I saw it, but I didn't know. You know, I know what satire is. Like it was satirical. It's supposed to be. I don't know. You know, but I'm not an Asian American. I mean, I guess I don't know what that feels like exactly. But I just thought it was hilarious, and I don't think that it necessarily. I mean, I watch a lot of comedy, and I watch a lot of people imitating other people, and I just think it's always very, very funny to me. But I don't think it takes away from someone's like actual career and talent.
Yeah, I think part of it is that because Lee really was the first serious Asian movie star,
right,
who was not portrayed as a servant or a
right
in a kind of subservient way.
Right.
I think people are very sensitive to how his image is portrayed.
Right.
You know, and I think the second thing is that he really wasn't like that in real life.
Okay.
At least from what I've read.
He wasn't cocky. I thought he was a bit cocky. That's from what I read.
He may have been, but from what I read an article by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who knew him very well, and I think it was in the Hollywood Reporter, and he said, he never picked a fight with anyone. Okay. And when a lot of people would challenge him. Okay. Like they'd stop him in the street and be like, let's fight, man.
That's part of
and
the
he'd
fantasy.
Be like, no, thank you very much.
But I feel like filmmakers have a right to kind of take it to wherever they want.
Yeah.
And maybe because this film is like supposed to be a serious film about a serious event. I don't know. Like if they had made fun of Bruce Lee like in a comedy thing, extravaganza movie or whatever, like maybe it would have been settled into it would have been stuck into the context of everyone getting made fun of.
Yeah. Although there's an aspect to that in that, I mean, both Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio are also played as kind of buffoonish. Right. You know what I mean? So the white people are sort of just as satirized as...
Right. Well, he gets thrown off the set. So the... he didn't exactly win.
Won't work with him,
Yeah, he lost his job.
What about the issue of that he may have killed his wife?
Oh yeah, that in terms of like a feminist thing, like.
No, I suppose, or just in general. I mean, there is a kind of.
I guess that's kind of
to his character.
I guess that's like maybe like old Hollywood myth, like a bit of mythology about crew people, like people who are, the kind of slightly off-kilter types that become film production people, like because it's a bit of a carnival, like a traveling circus, and
I see what you mean.
Yeah, I think that like
rumors fly.
Yeah, but I think it attracts like some eccentric sort of types. So maybe that's like part of the characterization of a group of production people back in the day, like that there's always somebody's wildly talented. But like someone does like really crazy things, like becomes a stuntman, but that's because they've got like a dark or crazy background, or I feel, that's part of the mythology.
Yeah, I
there.
can see that. And there always are, like I remember there used to be a story in old Hollywood that Clark Gable had killed somebody all driving drunk. And Harry Cohn or something had bought him his freedom or some shit like that.
Oh, yeah.
There's always stories like that. The Cary Grant, the gay rumors about Cary Grant and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I guess there's a lot of like covering up in Hollywood back in the day.
Yeah, in old Hollywood for sure. A lot of bearding, a lot of people getting away with criminal things and stuff like that.
Yeah.
People with a taste for young girls like Charlie Chaplin.
Oh yeah,
stuff like that.
Yeah, it was kind of like it kind of had its own rule of law a little bit, or no law.
But it's interesting that Tarantino, it's a very loving portrait of Hollywood.
I think so.
In that era.
Yeah.
Which is really, I think, the era that Tarantino loves the most. Is that
it's
sort
kind of a
late
strange
60s.
era, though, no, for film?
Well, yes, because it was a time when the studio system was dying.
Right.
And no one really knew where to go and what to do. It was before the new Hollywood took over.
But that's kind of Tarantino's early career, too. Like early 90s?
Yes, in the independent film movement.
Yeah, like it was like you're coming out of the 80s, like these sort of 80s genre films, and then it's kind of morphing into maybe the Harvey Weinstein era.
Where he took it. Yeah, I mean, because Sex, Lies, and Videotape comes out in 1989, I think.
Okay.
And then Reservoir Dogs is 91 or 92. So yeah, I mean, he came in, and Tarantino was a big part of revitalizing the film industry.
Right.
For sure.
Right. So he can maybe understand that, like the transitional era.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Thing.
It's true. And he is, in a way, the last of that. I mean, Soderbergh makes films still. But I feel like Tarantino, in a strange way, has had a career with a lot more integrity. You feel sometimes like Soderbergh makes a lot of movies that he doesn't necessarily quite want to make, like the Ocean's 11 movies.
Right.
Whereas Tarantino has always made, you feel like, precisely the film he's wanted to make.
I think Soderbergh is like he's like a technician almost. Like he really, really loves the process.
Yes.
So I feel like he's the type of person that would grab anything where he might be able to play with a new toy or experiment in a new way of doing something. It's not so much the end result with him. It seems like, I think Tarantino is like much more like he's got his way of doing it. Like he wants a certain feeling to wash over you every time.
Yeah, I think it's significant in a lot of ways that he is one of the last directors to insist on shooting on film, where almost everyone else has switched to digital.
Yeah, well, there's a little bit of moving backwards now to film, I think.
Is it?
Yeah, I think because maybe some of the costs don't necessarily... the digital... I think depending on what goes on, it doesn't always end up being a lot more.
In other words, it's
maybe it's evening out
economically, it doesn't really matter whether you...
I mean, I don't know that for sure, but I think I've heard that sometimes it doesn't necessarily matter.
Okay.
But
I do think, though, that with Tarantino, it's
that's also because
a conscious decision.
That's because the film, the people that are making film, like Kodak, like they're trying to keep it alive too. So maybe they're incentivizing. But
yeah, the only other one I know of though is Christopher Nolan.
Right.
Who insists on shooting on film.
No, I mean, watching something on film, especially projected film, it has its rhythm to it that it's not you're not really getting from digital. But I think we're getting accustomed more and more to we're losing that sensitivity more as time goes on. I don't think it's becoming as important.
All right. Well, do we want to talk about?
Well, yeah. Well, moving into totally different.
Totally different.
Well, I guess like instead of a 3-hour film, a 10-episode.
Yeah.
Is it 10 or
7.
8? 7 episode.
7 episode film. A
7-episode
picture.
Yeah, 7-hour picture. It's not that much more time than Tarantino.
Yeah.
That's basically with a lot of huge movie stars.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like a big movie, and it's on HBO.
Yeah, I mean, what HBO has done and premium cable in general has done in a lot of ways is just to make really long movies.
Right.
Yeah.
Like a super high quality.
Yeah, cinematic quality.
Yeah.
I don't know what you want to talk about with the show first, but I do think it's interesting that this was directed by a woman, whereas the first season was directed by a man.
I think it was a little bit of politics why they took a woman in for the second round.
And then at the end, of course, they threw her out and had the man, Vallée, I think it was his name, Jean-Marc Vallée.
Yeah.
They had him come in and finish the show, So it's in a strange way.
Did they fire her, or they just kind of in the editing room they just started?
I think they just pushed her out.
Okay.
whether they de facto fired her. I'm not sure she
Right.
was ever formally tossed out, but
Well, because I thought the editing of at least the first episode of season 2 was a hot mess.
Mhm.
And I mean, and I like editing that can be a bit jagged and all over the place. But I was like, whoa, like there's so many. The flashbacks and cuts are so quick that I can't actually retain what I saw. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, like Nicole just flipped her eyes. Oh, it's over. Like I couldn't register what actually happened. And I think they took a little too many experimental liberties on that one.
I did feel like at certain points they're building up a scene, and the scene reaches its peak, and instead of bringing it down again to sort of resolve the dramatic structure, they just cut at the peak and then go to something completely different.
Yeah.
And you're kind of left there being like, you know, you're sort of teetering on the cliff, and then they just move along.
It was like they were trying to do like some kind of like arty play with your perceptions sort of thing, but I think it was just overdone, and then you're also missing out on the actors' performances, which is like, the reason why you brought them specifically
all those people together.
there.
I did think that what was really interesting about it is that when you compare it to other shows, I'm thinking in particularly shows like Game of Thrones, and stuff like that.
Okay.
It's very, very rare that you see the emotional consequences of violence. Whereas in this show, it's all about the emotional consequences of violence and how the trauma of committing violence, which a lot of people don't think about. Think about the trauma of the victim, but there's a trauma to the perpetrator if they're not a complete psychopath. You know? There's trauma to the perpetrators.
Well, it's like a manslaughter situation here.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, obviously, it was essentially self-defense of one sort or another. She did it to save her friend. But the consequences when a person who's not a complete sociopath commits an act of violence.
It's like
they really explored that in a very good way.
Like her empathy, is backfiring up. Her sensitivity and humaneness is backfiring up back into her because she can't talk about it.
And to all of them, they're all being in some way corrupted by the lie. Which I thought was really, really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and of course it's a group of women who are, who are dealing with this, and then there's also that feeling like, are they going to get in trouble? Or is the law going to see past the letter of the law and into the spirit of the law more and be like, okay, these women are not criminals.
And this woman was in danger of being killed by one of her friends.
And you're sort of wondering if because in some ways I think the law was like written more for men than for women, and you sort of get the sense of like, or you can say that the law is is always enforcing itself against minorities, or there's all sorts of biases I think with it, and you're just sort of wondering how it's going to land on them, and you can understand why they kept their mouths shut too, because they know that it's not necessarily going to be, sympathetic. And that's like why the courtroom scene becomes like so, it's so intense, because you're just like, is this judge going to read through it and see it? And and then the grandmother, Meryl Streep's character, was wove very
horrifying woman.
Yeah, she wrapped her really got herself deep in there and flipped it way over on its head.
I thought that she was also very interesting because in a way she's a liar also. She's lying to herself about her son, and she seeks to hurt the people who are telling the truth about him. Which I thought, I thought the great theme, I mean, it's called Big Little Lies. I mean, to me, the great theme of the show, the second season anyway, was lies. Whether it's Reese Witherspoon's adultery or Meryl Streep's denial about her son's violence and her own part in creating that. Whether it's, Nicole Kidman sort of, which, to be fair, Nicole Kidman really is kind of a mess, through the whole thing. And it's her sort of lying and saying, no, everything's okay. All that sort of thing, and I thought that was a really interesting theme as well.
Yeah, it was riveting to watch her in the courtroom, because you're not sure, if she's just going to sit and be like, yes, I'm a mess, you should punish me, or if she's going to be like, yes, I'm a mess, but it's normal, and leave me alone. It was like one of those things where you're not sure if extreme vulnerability will redeem you or extreme vulnerability will sink you. And I like the way that it turned out because I feel like that was like it was hopeful for a modern life. Like for 2019, that kind of extreme vulnerability, we want that to kind of be recognized as opposed to maybe an earlier era when like you were more in survival. You were in like a survival mode against patriarchy or world wars or like all sorts of things, and so you.
Where women essentially were forced to stay in bad marriages and abusive marriages.
Yeah, or really, I was thinking about anyone, man or woman, where your vulnerability could really get you killed, or put into, or you had people who were waiting for you to be vulnerable, so that they could exploit you or enslave you or put you in a ghetto or and there's a certain the times are changing, and I thought that was like something really interesting about this.
That society's becoming more humane, in effect?
Well, we want to believe that it's starting to understand, that it, with the psychological, like that psychological and emotional things are okay to talk about, and if you're working on them, if you're actively aware of them, working on them, that's kind of it's acceptable to let somebody go through that process and not punish right away or judge right away or whatever, not necessarily just legally, but just interpersonally.
I did feel that, and this may be partly to do with the editing, but I felt like the character of the cop, he was essentially the Inspector Javert character, basically, who's out to get them.
That's a very good
analogy. But I thought that she was really underdrawn. I mean, she just doesn't really emerge as a character.
It's kind of good, though. It's kind of nice. Like, her shadow is...
She's a kind of floating menace, sort of, in the background.
Well, you don't know if she's a menace or not, but you're just like, and also because she's black, and then the perpetrator,
perpetrator is also black.
Right, so you're like, is she... You're wondering... is there going to be like some kind of tribal understanding between them? Like where there's that moment, like, is she going to she knows that like her sister is like
certain solidarity of
is like maybe did something for self-defense but isn't so there's a lot of subtlety, like again the letter of the law, spirit of the law sort of thing. Like, is she going to stick to the way her training, or is she going to maybe shape it differently for the situation?
Move sort of beyond the law slightly, or bend the law slightly.
Yeah, or just wait and see, really, which is what she did, right? It all kind of was a wait and see situation.
There was also an interesting theatricality to the show. Yeah. Like, I felt like
it could have been a play.
Yeah. But even though it's shot very naturalistically, like, I guess most of it was shot in natural light,
well, I mean, they make you like to think that it is that way. But,
oh, really?
You don't necessarily know.
Yeah. I felt like, for example, we were talking about Laura Dern, who's really over the top. Yeah. And I felt like Meryl Streep, although it appears to be a kind of naturalistic performance, is highly stylized.
Yeah, I know. All of it felt that. Yeah, it did feel that way. Oh, I mean, I noticed that they were wearing wigs. I mean, like, I'm very super sensitive to wig things, but
Nicole Kidman's and Meryl Streep's were pretty blatantly obvious.
Yeah, but already that lends that's kind of theater a little bit, I think. Because it was very stylized. Like, her, she had to have this very specific tone and way of speaking, and you expected the same thing out of her every time you saw her, and she kind of repeats herself. Like, her lines are the same kind of over and over again. So there's something like almost not real about her.
It's like she is a woman living in total illusion. I mean, she's delusional about her son.
Yeah, like she gets up in the morning and like maybe she eats a little bit and then she like immediately becomes like this investigator, and it's like it's kind of like a character. She's like turning to some kind of like a character of a person.
She's play acting, essentially.
Yeah.
She's play acting the concerned grandmother.
Yeah, and it's like it's so weird too because she's it's like she wants custody of these kids, but she never really asked. You're like always wondering. I mean, I was wondering. I was like, does she even think about whether or not she's capable of taking care of two young twin like wild boys?
Exactly.
Like at her age, like well, like why is she?
Well, I have to tell you,
that's part of the denial.
This is one of the reasons, like, by Big Little, by the show itself.
Right.
One of the reasons I really liked it is because I really identified with some of that. Because in my family background, there was emotional abuse and stuff like that, and a lot of denial.
Right.
And I felt that she was basically trying to enforce her own denial, in that my son didn't do anything to this woman. She's, unfit, or she's a mess and stuff like that.
Right.
And then obviously also the woman, I can't remember the name of the actress who was his rape victim. She's kind of saying, oh, she wasn't really a victim. She made all this up. And she's trying to punish the people who she sees as slandering her son.
Right.
It's essentially a very extreme form of denial.
Right.
And I recognized it. I mean, I thought it was very realistic.
But it is, and it's also, but there's really, you really think that she might be right when the way that she says it, because she says it she says it in a way that could be valid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, like Shailene Woodley's character could have been a wild child, and the truth is we don't really know that much about her as an audience member. So she kind of digs right into the gray zone and then extracts it and turns it into a truth that's very compelling and almost believable.
She weaponizes it.
Yeah, but it becomes a really believable narrative for the people and without hard evidence. I guess this is why we have court of law and process. But like without evidence, it's really difficult to say what the truth is.
It's a very dramatic scene when Nicole Kidman finally shatters that in the courtroom and finally builds a kind of counter-narrative for herself.
Yeah, well, she had to discover something first on her iPad. Yeah.
But did you think that was realistic? That she suddenly becomes strong?
I thought that was a little, I thought that was a little bit slightly contrived because she seemed like she was really a mess, like, and not, because like when you're really a mess in like that kind of post-trauma situation, like you can't flip around that easily. Yeah. So I was like, I guess what she discovered had to have been empowering enough for her to flip and become like this lawyer presence in the courtroom. Yeah. Like it was, I think maybe they needed a little bit more of maybe they needed another scene in there or something else to just
bring her up,
watch her transition up into the confident point.
Again, we come down to the problem of we don't know how much the editing there was manipulated.
Oh, okay, there we go. Yeah, that's true.
Maybe there was a scene or two.
Yeah.
I also felt like, speaking of the editing, actually, there was a strange quality to how certain scenes were played off screen in a way that I thought really didn't work. Like when the boyfriend of what's the actress's name with the black hair? The rape victim.
Oh, Shailene Woodley.
Shailene Woodley.
Yeah.
When her boyfriend or prospective boyfriend is called in to talk to the cops.
Yeah.
I feel like there should have been a scene there where he's talking to the policewoman.
Oh, right,
and instead, like, he tells her about it in the next scene, and it's kind of like,
yeah.
It doesn't really work.
Yeah, and also why was he suddenly suspicious? Like it was like there were some question marks.
Yeah, there were some leaps of sort of dramatic leaps that didn't really make sense.
Yeah.
But on a more positive note, you've written, when you were in school, you wrote something substantial on Ozu. Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you think there was a sort of Ozu quality to some of it? Because I feel like I felt there was.
Not from the editing.
No. Yeah. But there's an intimacy to the way the camera films them, I felt.
Yeah.
And that sort of reminded me of Ozu, that sort of close examination of domestic life and stuff like that.
I didn't feel that quality from it, but I want to hear why you thought.
I thought there was a quietness to a lot of the characters,
excepting
those scenes where they sort of blow up.
Okay.
But there was, in a lot of the scenes, there was a quietness and an intimacy to the way domestic life is portrayed.
Okay.
That reminded me of Ozu's sort of like in late spring. Not so much Tokyo Story, but an autumn afternoon and stuff like that, where there's a kind of quietness, a kind of.
Well, it was a lot of
great drama going on just underneath.
Right, because they're kind of on the seaside town, and that has like that languid quality.
Yeah.
And then it's like that California lifestyle.
Yeah.
And then but underneath it is like something that's really toxic and insane. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I didn't. I think maybe because I was thrown off by all the jagged cutting. Yeah. But I think I understand what you're saying. I think I get it.
I did think the editing obviously was not. It didn't have that
right.
kind of flowing.
But I'll watch it again. And I'll think about Ozu the next time.
Yeah, and there's certain use of not close-ups, but I guess like medium shots, static medium shots
of like talking, of like conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And ritual.
Right.
Where obviously when you are American and you watch it, you don't feel that there's any ritual there. But if you watch it, and I mean I've lived in a foreign country for almost 20 years, so it's like when I watched it, I felt like there was a lot of the ritual of American life, suburban American life.
Getting in the car.
Wealth. Driving the kids to school, what I mean, stuff like that.
Right.
You have to go to college, things like this.
Oh, okay.
There's a rich when they're
traditional.
Yes, it's a kind of traditional, very high, either upper class or upper middle class kind of quality to a lot of the scenes.
Right. These parties, take your kids birthday parties.
Yes, the birthday parties is very elaborate. Take the kids to the beach, stuff like that.
Right.
I thought that was an interesting sort of quality to it.
Yeah.
And especially it was directed by a woman from England.
Oh, Andrea Arnold.
Is British.
Yeah.
And then the guy who came in and took it away from her, valet, is Canadian, I think, French Canadian.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah. So.
Well, I think he was the original.
He directed the first season.
Oh no, he's not the creator. Isn't David E. Kelly the creator?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. It was written entirely by a man.
Okay.
The whole series. So.
Well, it's based on a book by a woman.
Right. Okay, that's true.
Yeah.
But not the second season.
Oh, okay.
Only the first season. So the second is like them coming in and extending the themes of the book. You think there's going to be a third season?
But they were.
You think they resolved everything?
Well, no, it still was a bit open-ended at the end, right? I mean,
I thought though that could make a good ending.
Yeah, I think
it's. They go in and confess, and who knows what comes of it.
I think it's that. I mean, I got the sense that they were going to confess, but it'll be all right. That was the feeling that I had. I mean, maybe that's all right.
Yeah, there's a kind of purification there.
Yeah. Like I think we had the exposure in the courtroom to the extent, like how much more do they need to really discuss beyond that? And
I feel like it would just turn into a courtroom drama. Like it would become something totally different.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that these actors, I mean, also they can reshuffle and work together on something else. Like I would see this ensemble or like part of it at least on another show.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Reese Witherspoon has just started a show. Just came out with a show on Apple TV with Jennifer Aniston and Steve Carell. It's called The Morning Show.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there's it's another sort of serious.
She's really moved into producing and generating her own projects.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I've always wondered why Nicole Kidman doesn't do that, because she's got even more status and power, if you like, in Hollywood.
Maybe. I don't know. I guess some actors are not really interested in. It's really hard to get behind the scenes.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's especially if you're acting in it at the same time. It's like I can't imagine how much stress that is. But I mean, Nicole can definitely, she has probably a different sensibility, like a different sort of attraction to different kind of material.
What do you think's the quality of Nicole Kidman that makes her so in demand? Because I have to admit I've never quite understood it.
I think the way that she looks, first of all, is
she's very beautiful.
Yeah, but she's just very unusual figure, face and figure. Yeah. And no, she's a bit of like a mythological creature. She's like almost like transcendent, sort of. I don't know if it's unattainable, but it's like she's something a little bit transcendent about her. Like Reese is very earthy.
Yes.
And very much like somebody that in your neighborhood or community. And Nicole is like this artsy, like some other creature that's just like so not regular looking.
There's an extremity to her, a kind of extremeness, I think, in a way. That may come from her vulnerability. She seems quite fragile. in
Right.
a lot of her roles.
But she's very, very feminine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
that's
super,
true.
super feminine.
Whereas there's a masculinity to Reese Witherspoon's character.
Right,
in
right,
so
right.
many ways.
She's like the
assertive one.
dad and the mom at the same time.
Right, exactly. Whereas her husband is quite rather effeminate.
Yeah,
in some
exactly.
ways. Yeah,
He's
it's
like
very
very
interesting.
passive.
Yeah, yeah.
And he complains about, his passivity, but he is actually a passive character. It's like he's sort of in denial about that.
Yeah, there's a turnabout in the gender roles there.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And Laura Dern also, I feel like,
Right.
has a masculine quality in the film.
Yeah.
Although maybe we're stereotyping that, like it's because they're sort of strong and assertive, we say,
Right.
oh, that's very masculine.
But Laura Dern is very confrontational in all her work.
Yes.
And there's something that you don't expect it out of a woman,
It's
really.
true. That's true.
At least, like, not traditionally, like, you don't expect a woman to
It's
kind
funny
of
to
flash
see her
out.
in a normal role because
Right.
I really always think of her as being in David Lynch. Where it's blue, whether it's Blue Velvet or
I like Wild at
Wild
Heart.
at Heart, yeah, or the Twin Peaks. The new
I
Twin
could
Peaks,
see Nicole Kidman like in a Wild at Heart role.
Do you think so?
Yeah, because
Well, I don't see that at all.
Well, no, because like there's like the moment David Lynch plays with the composition a lot, and he does like those like weird like kind of ethereal flourishes on the he almost like illustrates on the camera on the shots.
Oh yes, yeah.
And I feel like Nicole like it suits her physicality to kind of become almost like not real looking. Do you know what I mean?
There is something sort of. It's funny because I was thinking about that.
Like Botticelli's Venus. Like there's
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
There's the shots of her several times in the
Right.
show of her putting makeup on. And I
Okay.
feel like it's like she's painting herself.
Which
it's
show?
almost clown-like in Big Little Lies.
Oh, okay.
I felt like it was almost clown-like. It was very theatrical the way she was like painting herself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
It was
yeah.
interesting.
Hmm.
She's like literally putting her face on. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I know. I just feel like when I watch especially some of our older movies, I'm always like, wow, where does this person come from?
Really?
Yeah, like that's kind of the feeling that I get.
I do like her in Eyes Wide
Yeah.
Shut.
Oh
But,
yeah, that's the one I was thinking about.
Yeah, but a lot of her other stuff I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't connect with it for some reason.
All right.
Maybe she's more of a women's star, if you like, the way Julia Roberts was. Like
Maybe.
Julia Roberts, most of her fans are women, really.
Okay.
Men sort of
Getting
were into more like sex bomb sort of stars.
Yeah, Julia Roberts is a very different kind of actress than Nicole Kidman, but
Sure.
but Julia Roberts is like a woman that women want to be though,
Right.
kind of straight talking, naturally sexy, not necessarily super gorgeous, crazy,
Right.
but like gorgeous enough in a way that's like relatable.
Mm.
That's very much like a woman's hero.
I feel like Nicole Kidman may be relatable to women in her vulnerability.
And the feminist, I think I don't think that she's relatable. I think that it's more like fantasy.
She's ethereal.
Yeah,
sort of way.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like almost like she's like a doll that you see behind glass when you're a kid, and you're like, what's that doll? I need to have it. Like it's like that's the quality that she gives off to me.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, do we want to wrap it up, or do we have more to?
No, I think that's it. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
We're gonna have a few more discussions.
Next is Tree of Life, and
maybe Midsummer.
Maybe Midsummer. I need to see it before we.
You need to see it. I just saw it this weekend. Yeah. But maybe we'll throw something else in. We'll see.
All right. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening.